So a while back, a channel on YouTube called DIY Perks released a video building a really big, fancy daylight lamp that's very accurate at mimicking real sunlight. And when I saw that video, I knew I had to build one myself. I thought it would be very useful for filmmaking, and I really wanted one for those dark winter mornings where it's hard to get out of bed and hard to really wake up properly. But soon after beginning the project, I realized how big, as in physically big and complicated and expensive, a project it really is. But after many attempts and revisions and making a whole lot of mistakes, I've landed on this design. It looks quite a bit different from the original. If you haven't already watched the original DIY Perks video, I highly recommend it. It's a great video, and I'm going to be referencing it a lot in this one, so you'll probably want to watch it first or give it a rewatch. I'll link it up here. This design is smaller, cheaper, and easier to make, and also much easier to customize. In terms of the accuracy at mimicking real daylight, it's obviously not as good because it's smaller, but it's pretty close. So let's head over to the desk and take a closer look at this thing. So there are 3 key ways that this differs from a commercially available daylight lamp and why it's better. The first one is the light source. This is a 50-watt COB LED. It's daylight colored, so 5600 Kelvin approximately, and it's very high CRI. They are quite a bit more difficult to work with and buy than LED strips, but it's necessary for this. Because the second reason is this modifier. You see, sunlight isn't just like a regular lamp. The sun is, for all intents and purposes, infinitely far away, so that means that shadows don't change in size, and it has some other weird effects, like the inverse square law doesn't apply, because all of the light rays are parallel or collimated. This doesn't quite collimate the light, but it focuses it to be closer to collimated and look more like sunlight. And thirdly, is where it all comes together, is this filter. This isn't something you can go out and buy, you have to make it yourself. And this mimics the way that the light from the sun scatters with molecules in the atmosphere, and this makes the light itself look a bit warmer, and it's blue like the sky because of the same effect. And we need something like this in front of the lamp. I'll throw up a quick comparison video where you can see the difference it makes. It might not look that obvious in the video, but this is the difference between it looking like a lamp and it looking like the sun. I really can't convey it over the video. You just have to experience it yourself. When I turn this thing on in the morning and I'm tired, it really just wakes me up. It just magically transforms it from a lamp to sunlight, according to my brain. It really just fools it. And I can't convey that over the video. You really just have to experience it yourself, but this makes a huge difference. So how did I make this? Well, firstly, this lamp is 50 watts, so I can just cool it with a little AMD stock cooler like this. These come with CPUs, and people don't use them, so they can be had for free, or very cheap at least. I 3D printed this little bracket, and it's mounted to a Speedlight Flash 2 Bones mount adapter. Now, this 3D printed part is painted with reflective paint. That's very important. If you don't do that, it'll melt or set itself on fire. So make sure that if you have something like this, it needs to be reflective. In terms of the power supply, I just used this laptop power brick I had kicking around, and goes into an LED driver. I will say though, building this was pretty tedious, and if you don't have the time or the skills or the knowledge to do that, you really don't have to. You can buy a regular high CRI daylight colored film light, which is pretty similar to this. There's one called the Aperture Amaran 60D. It's around $170, and that is maybe 3 times more than I paid for this, but it's also much nicer to use, and it just comes pre-assembled. Very easy. Now, before landing on this modifier, I tried using a satellite dish, but I realized that, well, it's huge. I don't have room for that. And also, it's very, very hard to focus the light. This LED has to be right in the focus point, so you need some very fine adjustment hardware in order to make that happen. And also, most satellite dishes don't focus the light to a single point, they focus it to a little disc that's usually the size of the receiver that's on it. Now, if that's bigger than your LED, you're kind of in trouble. It's not really going to look that good. But if you do decide to build your own modifier, I will give you a great tip to not use mirror film like in the original video. It's much easier to use something like this paint, which is just reflective mirror effect spray paint. It goes by a bunch of different names. You just have to make sure that it's neutrally colored and very reflective. This one's a lot more reflective than the film, and it also doesn't ripple and buckle, and it's a lot smoother. Now, what I do is very easy. I just buy a Bones Mount light modifier. They're very easy to work with. I can just pop it on like that, and that's it. And it can also hold the filter very easily. Now, you can also buy something called a beauty dish. They're quite a bit bigger, but they also collimate the light a lot more effectively. There's a bit of a balancing act you have to find between how much you want spent on it and how big you want the lamp to be, how collimated you want the light to be, and how big of an area you want it to light. The more collimated, the smaller the area is going to be. So it's a balancing act, and you just have to find out what's right for you. Now, this filter is really where I hit a dead end. I tried using a fish tank, like in the video, then fill it with soapy water. It was a huge pain to build, and apparently I wasn't paying attention in high school physics when we learned about pressure. I forgot that pressure is only dependent on height and not volume, so the glass I bought was way too thin. And wouldn't you know it, I ended up with about 5 liters of water on the floor. So don't try that, use this method instead. Also, don't use nanoparticles, this is much easier and cheaper. This rubbery material is silicone caulk or bathroom silicone. It goes by a bunch of different names, but what you have to do is go down to your hardware store and look a bit like a lunatic, shine a flashlight at all of the different caulks to find one that does this. I believe I used GE clear bathroom silicone, and it was really cheap. I'll link to it in the description. I also 3D printed this little ring. I put plastic film on the bottom, then I squeezed a bunch of this caulk into it, plastic film on the top, and just waited for it to cure. Now this is a lot thicker than what you normally use, so it takes about 1 to 2 weeks to cure. And just give it plenty of time, because if you take it off before it's cured, you're going to ruin the whole part. So I think that's all the explanation I can give. I hope that this has been helpful. If you want to recreate this particular design, I've uploaded this filtering. I've uploaded this bracket that was very time consuming to design. And I've uploaded this thing where all of the electronics mount to. It's pretty customizable in OpenSCAD, so you might be able to fit it to your specific needs. I'll leave a link in the description to the printables page. I'll also leave links to where you can buy everything that I've used. So I hope this video has been helpful for anyone trying to recreate this project. It's much easier to learn from my mistakes than making them yourself. It's super great to have a daylight lamp like this one, so best of luck trying to build one yourself.